All right, welcome to the show. Today, we're diving into a real showdown, a head-to-head competition. In one corner, you've got some of the smartest AI translation tools out there. And in the other, the actual human authors, the experts who wrote the original text. It's going to be a high-stakes challenge. So let's get right to it. A recent study put 3 AI heavyweights up against human authors. And the question is pretty simple. When things get complicated, who's more accurate? Is it the machine that's built for lightning speed, or is it the human brain that just gets all that tricky nuance? Okay, so to figure out who's the real champ, the researchers set up a seriously tough test. And I mean, we're not talking about translating where's the library here. No. This was the big leagues of translation. It all came down to this number, 163. That's how many super specialized, brainy Arabic research titles they had to translate into English. And these weren't just picked out of a hat, They came straight from a peer-reviewed academic journal covering things like humanities and social sciences. So, why was this so ridiculously hard? Well, this was an absolute minefield for any translator. We're talking about that really dense academic language from fields like literature and political science. It's just packed to the gills with specialized jargon, cultural references, and complex ideas. For a research title, accuracy isn't just a nice to have, it's literally everything.
And here are our contenders. On the AI side, you've got the heavyweights, Google Translate, Gemini, and ChatGPT. And for Team Human, well, this is where it gets interesting. The researchers used translations from the original authors of the papers. Now, here's the kicker, and this is super important. These authors are brilliant experts in their fields, but they are not professional translators. Just remember that, because it's going to be a huge deal later on.
All right, the fight is on. The researchers went through every single translation with a fine-tooth comb, counting up every little mistake. And when they tallied the final scores, whoa, the results were definitely not what you'd expect. Okay, so let's just look at the raw numbers. If you're just counting up the total number of errors, look at this. Gemini actually comes out on top with only 66 mistakes. And get this. The human authors, they made the most errors overall, with 92. Kind of shocking, right? This chart really drives it home. You can see Gemini way out in front, with the humans kind of trailing behind everybody else. So that's it then? Game over? The machines win? Easy peasy? Well, not so fast. Because, just counting up the errors, that doesn't tell you the whole story. Not even close. Once the researchers started digging into what kind of mistakes were being made, a totally different story started to unfold. And boom, here's the twist. Remember how I said those human authors weren't pro-translators? Well, check this out. They made way more of the simple grammar mistakes. What the study calls syntactic errors. We're talking about stuff like using the wrong preposition or forgetting the word the. So yeah, the AI's grammar was shinier, but the humans were just making these little fumbles. And this is our first big clue that the AI's victory might not be what it seems. This is where we really need to look under the hood. Because it's not just about how many mistakes you make, it's about what kind of mistakes you make. And trust me, in translation, not all mistakes are created equal. I mean, think about it, right? A missing comma. Okay, a little sloppy. A word that sounds a bit off, fine. But getting the entire meaning of a sentence completely backwards, that's not just a mistake. That's a total disaster. And that's where this term comes in. Mistranslation. This is the big one. This is when the translation isn't just a little off, it's flat out wrong. It completely misses the point. So the million-dollar question is, who was making more of these catastrophic mistakes? Okay, let's look at a killer example from a literature title. The original Arabic refers to a work called Bint al-Haram. Every single one of the AIs totally whiffed on this. They didn't translate it, they just spelled it out using English letters. So if you're an English speaker, you're just left scratching your head. But the human author, they knew what was up. They knew this wasn't just a bunch of sounds. It was the title of a novel, and they translated it correctly as The Illegitimate Girl. And that just nails the difference, doesn't it? The AI processes words, but the human understands meaning. The AI's translation had 0 grammar errors, but it was completely useless. The human's translation, it captured the essence perfectly. Here's another huge tripwire for AI. It's this concept called polysemy. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a fancy way of saying a single word can have a bunch of different meanings. And AI, well, it gets really confused trying to pick the right one from the context. Perfect example. In a media studies title, they had this Arabic word. Now, this word can mean direction, like north, south, east, west, but it can also mean attitude, like someone's opinion. Guess which one the AIs picked? Yep, the literal, physical direction. But the human author, they got the context. They knew it meant attitude. So once again, the AI was technically right in a vacuum, but in the real world, it was totally wrong.
And the list just keeps going. The AIs couldn't handle specialized stuff like false cognates. They even got tripped up by geopolitical acronyms like AUKUS, which is, a pretty big deal. They'd spit out some phonetic nonsense instead of just recognizing the official term.
So, let's go back to the original question. After all this, who actually won? Well, the real answer is, maybe that's the wrong question. It's not about winning. It's about working together. So let's look at the real scorecard. What's the AI good at? Speed. And it makes fewer of those little grammar mistakes. But what about the human? They're the MVP when it comes to what actually counts. Getting the nuance, understanding the context, knowing the jargon, and the big one, capturing the actual meaning. The researchers themselves really nailed it in their conclusion. They said that machine translation is awesome for being easy and fast, but that speed happens at the expense of accuracy. And for real accuracy, you still need the work of a human translator. So what's the winning play? It's not machine versus human. It's machine plus human. The study recommends something called human-assisted machine translation. And it's pretty simple, really. Step 1, let the AI crank out a super fast first draft. Step 2, a human expert comes in and cleans it up, fixing all those huge mistakes in meaning and context. And boom, what you get is the best of both worlds. AI speed married with human brain power. Which really brings us to the final question for you. Yeah, for a quick email or figuring out a menu, AI is fantastic. But what about when the stakes are high? A legal contract, a medical document, something where getting it wrong is just not an option. After seeing all this, would you really trust an AI to do it all on its own? This study suggests the answer is a pretty clear no.